Hi, how's it going? My name's Decker, and welcome to Langlet SL Paper 1 class. We're going to go over the first three elements of an acronym we're going to call SOAPSToneS today, and we're going to use this to help you better analyze text for the Paper 1 exam. I'd say about half my students use some acronym, a lot use SOAPSToneS, some use some other ones. There's another one called GAPS a lot of teachers use. We're going to use SOAPSToneS. I don't really love SOAPSToneS that much, but it's very helpful in getting down some of the basics of deeply analyzing a text. So very quickly to go over SOAPSToneS. As you can see, SOAPSToneS stands for speaker, occasion, audience, purpose, subject, tone, and style. And today, looking at one past Paper 1 exam, we're going to be going over the speaker, occasion, and audience components of SOAPSToneS. But before we get in, and remember that the lesson goals today, we're going to review these first three components, but you got to keep in mind that oftentimes there are many different interpretations of a text, and when I read a text, and when you read a text, and when your teacher reads a text, a lot of times we'll have the same thing, but sometimes we'll come up with some different things. So this is a text you might actually see in class. You might see it actually on like an exam that your teacher uses. So keep that in mind. We're going over some answers. If you get some that are a little bit different, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're wrong or I'm wrong or your teacher's wrong. There's a lot of different possible answers to doing well on the Paper 1 exam. So let's get into it. The text that we're going to use today is, as you can see as you look around here, is the standard level paper for November 2014 morning. So I want you to open this up and go down to the first text here, and we're going to talk about Daryl Kegel's The Kegel Post, Cartoons and Commentary, Tom Purcell's Genetically Engineered Children. All right. Now, before we begin, you got to read the text. All right? There's no way around this. You've got to read the text. All right? So stop listening to me, push pause on your video, and go read the text, okay? Read the text. Oh, hey, you're back. Welcome. Wasn't that an interesting text? I'm sure you read the whole thing before you went on, right? Okay, good. All right, let's get into the speaker part of this. All right. The first thing we want to talk about is how this thing right here, the name for this, we're going to call it a title bar. Okay. So this title bar, we can see that this is Daryl Kegel's The Kegel Post, Cartoons and Commentary, and ooh, it looks like they've got a cool daily newsletter. I don't want to subscribe to that. I don't at all. But what you need to take out of this is that this is a blog, or it's an internet blog that posts humorous articles about social issues, or the news maybe. And we can say that Daryl Kegel is the publisher. All right, he's the publisher of this. Maybe he owns the Kegel Post. It seems like he might. This little SM here is similar to a TM in that it means that no one else can create a Kegel post. It's his. It means he also probably uses it to make money. But Daryl Kegel didn't write this. Tom Purcell wrote this. All right, Tom Purcell is the author. And Tom Purcell's got a funny little one right here, which from today's class on, you can't forget little footnotes like that. You got to make sure you go check them out. And before we go down all the way to the bottom, we're going to check out this Taylor Jones character who's got a funny little two. And so for part of our speaker, we're going to go down to the footnotes, and we're going to see we've got descriptions of who Tom Purcell and who Taylor Jones are. It says Tom Purcell is a freelance writer and humor columnist for Pittsburgh Tribune Review, syndicated by Cable Cartoons, and authored the article Genetically Engineered Children. What this means is that Tom Purcell wrote this article. It was first published in the Pittsburgh Tribune Review, and then this fancy word here, syndicated, means that it was then published in other newspapers, magazines, whatever you want to call online publications, blogs, whatever. But it was first published in the Pittsburgh Tribune, which means that Tom Purcell gets his first paycheck from these people. Okay? And then other people, when they publish this stuff, maybe he makes some more money from them then. All right. Similarly, Taylor Jones is a freelance cartoonist syndicated by Cable Cartoons. And so that's his job. And this is Tom's job. And what we need to know for the beginning about Speaker is that these three people come together to be the speaker for this piece. It's important that you don't forget one element of what makes up the speaker of a piece. Got it? Good. Two, whenever we look for speaker, we're also going to be checking for possible sources of bias. And so there's not really huge sources of bias in here, but there's 2 points that I want to draw to your attention. One is that these people are all in this for money somehow, okay? They might not care that much about the issue of genetic engineering. Instead, they might just realize that the more outcry, the more they make people upset, the more they make people angry, the more popular they might become. They might go more viral. And so they have an interest in being controversial, all right, or being funny, or getting clicks. The more people who read this, the more people who click on this, the more famous they get, the more money they get. So that's one possible source of bias. I don't think it's going to play a huge role in analyzing this, but I don't want you to overlook that either. The second thing that we want to look for is that we need to say, like, the medium is very important, and that this is published online, whereas people would probably read the Pittsburgh Tribune. Maybe they get a paper copy, but that's also part of the speaker, is how, is it a book, is it blah blah blah, but you need to know the medium that this message is being transmitted in. So those 3 things go with the speaker. Now for SOAPSToneS, what I want you to keep in mind, and take a look at your screen right now, is you need to ask for speaker. Who is the speaker who produced this piece? What is their background, and why are they making the points they're making? Is there a bias in what was written? You must be able to cite evidence from the text on what you're given to support your answer. All right. So now, given what we just talked about with speaker, I think it's pretty clear we can say, these people, they provide us evidence in the footnotes about who they are, and if IB does that, then you should probably make sure that you include that as your analysis of speaker. And we know enough to satisfy this requirement, and this is the evidence that we're going to need to answer this question. Okay? Got it? Excellent. Let's move on to the next part, which is occasion. All right, now the occasion for this is like an onion, and there's a lot of different layers we have to peel back. Oh, that's a cliche. I'm sorry. I apologize. But anywho, the most obvious occasion that you need to see here is that in the summer of 2012, University of Washington researchers made a massive biotechnology breakthrough. All right, and then they're like, "What's the breakthrough, doctor?" Well, blah 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 blah. We can pick our child's intelligence, and not only that, we can determine the height, weight, eye color, and IQ of children. So the occasion is that a breakthrough in medical science or genetic engineering has allowed researchers and parents to work together to design super babies. Okay, we've got babies of the future. Wow, what a new future this is going to bring. It's really important from the beginning that you recognize that the occasion here is not a realistic scenario. This is considered common knowledge that you cannot go to the doctor and do this right now, okay? I've had some students who thought that this was possible. It's not, okay? But it might be possible in the near future. So we might call this a hypothetical reality or a scenario that might be possible in the near future. That's one aspect of the occasion here, okay? There's another aspect to the occasion here, all right? And this aspect of the occasion involves what's going on in the story that the article's telling. So that's occasions, what's prompting the author to write this. And then in the text, there's another occasion that we got to check out, that this involves just a man and a woman going to see a doctor about having a child. And this part of the occasion is very significant because while the subject matter is hypothetical and that part of the occasion is unreal, the author has married, no pun intended, that concept to something that is very much real for almost everybody who's had a child, and that's going to the doctor when you don't know anything to talk about beginning to have a baby. And so the real and unreal aspects of this piece come together, and the authors use it very effectively to make it more compelling and seem more convincing. So that analysis of the occasion is pretty important, that we've got this breakthrough, but we've also got, family going to see a doctor. Those are two parts of the occasion here. Does that make sense? Okay. We're going to go look at the actual wording for occasion that we want to use in the future and make sure that you can answer that based on this document. So if we look at occasion, we're going, what is the occasion? In other words, the time and place of the piece. What event or situation prompted the author to write the piece? How do you know from the text? What event led to its publication or development? Is it particularly important to understand the context? Or rather, it is particularly important to understand the context that encouraged this writing to happen. And so with that definition, do you think you could go back now and say, what is the occasion of this piece? Ready? Go. Okay, you do it? Good. Next, today, the next thing we want to talk about is audience. All right, the third part of SOAPSToneS is audience. At this point, audience is kind of, we want to make sure that we get to the really, well, first let's read what it says about what I want you to look for audience. So on the screen it says, audience refers to the group of readers to whom this piece is deliberately directed. The audience may be one person or a small group or a large group. It may be a certain person or a certain people. What assumptions can you make about the audience? Is it mixed racial sex group? What social class? What political party? Who was the document created for, and how do you know? Are there any words or phrases that are unusual or different? Does the speaker use language that's specific for a unique audience? Does the speaker evoke God, nation, liberty, history, hell? How do you know, and why is the speaker using this type of language? All right, so some of this for audience, you got to get into what we're going to dig in deeper into subject and style a little bit. But it's important when you read this text to realize that the character of the doctor is not really a realistic human being, okay? And if we look, the evidence starts with the part that might have made you chuckle during the piece. But like this part right here for me, when it says, no offense, but you and your wife are a bit chubby. And so, no doctor, a doctor might say this in formal language, like, I'm concerned that you are, overweight, but he's talking about designing a kid for them. It's like, you're fat. And then later on, as if we couldn't get it that time, it says, you and your wife have some big honkers, which means their noses are big. And so this language that the doctor is using through the author, Tom Purcell, is not realistic, all right? The author's using exaggeration to give us a character, like a caricature of a doctor that's not real. And what that is satire. Satire is when an author uses exaggeration or ridicule or hyperbole in order to prove a point or to show something about a given situation. And in here, because the doctor right here is so pro genetic engineering, we're supposed to look at the doctor and be like, oh my God, that's so shallow, right? How could you be so shallow? How could this doctor think like this? And we're supposed to maybe chuckle a little bit about it as like, oh, this is ridiculous, ha ha ha. And so how that relates to audience is important because this method of social commentary is actually very popular right now. I bet maybe you're familiar with a couple shows on TV that use comedy to talk about the news or that use comedy to deal with complex social issues. In America, there's a bunch of them. I know in Korea, there's a bunch of them. And this is important because as it pertains to audience, the audience of this Kaggle post, to begin with, cartoons and commentary, all right? It's people who like to read things and go, ha ha ha, oh, that's so funny, oh my goodness. And in that case, this is people who like to laugh and consume information in a humorous way, all right? Now, can we draw any other conclusions based on people like that? Yeah, people who would read the newspaper, for one thing. Remember, this is published in a newspaper. It's the Pittsburgh Tribune Review first. So people who like this stuff are people who would read the newspaper, and maybe we can also draw the conclusion or infer that these people went to college. Okay, so the final words I'd say about the audience here is that it's people who like to consume satire or who enjoy their news with a bit of humor, and it's also people who have some degree of some level of education. Okay. As for other things it mentions in the audience, is it for men or women? We could also maybe say, because we're dealing with parents, that it might relate specifically true to young couples who are thinking about starting a family. That also might be a target audience for this, because these are things they might be thinking about as well. Anyways, these are just some of the aspects that you want to think about when you're analyzing speaker, occasion, and audience. That's what we went over today, and those are the 3 parts of SOAPSToneS. We got into a little bit of the issue of satire, and we're going to get down into this doctor a little bit more tomorrow, next episode when we get into purpose and subject a little bit more. So I hope this first lecture on genetic engineering was pretty easy. It's going to get a little bit more complicated in the next one. I'm Decker. Hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time.